Take a seat, grab yourself a mug of something tasty. The Story of Beowulf, translated from Anglo-Saxon into modern English prose by Ernest J.B. Kirtlan, 1914. Hrothgar spake, he the lord of the Danes. Ask not after our luck, for sorrow is renewed to the folk of the Danes. Asher is dead, the elder brother of Ermenlaf. He was my counselor and my rune-teller, my shoulder companion, when we in the battle protected our heads, when troops were clashing and helmets were crashing. He was what an earl ought to be, a very good atheling. Such a man was Asher, and a wandering slaughter-guest was his handslayer, in heart. I know not whither that dire woman exulting in carrion, and by her feeding made famous went on her journeys. She was wreaking vengeance for the feud of thy makings when thou killedst Grendel but yesternight, in a violent way, with hard grips, because all too long he was lessening and destroying my people. He fell in the struggle, gave his life as forfeit, and now comes another, a mighty manscather, to avenge her son, and the feud hath renewed, as many seem a heavy heart woe, to many a thane who weeps in his mind over the treasure-giver. Now lieth low the hand which availed you well, for every kind of pleasure. I heard land-dwellers, and hall-counsellors, and my people say they saw two such monstrous march-steppers, alien sprites, holding the moorland. And one of them was in the likeness of a woman as far as they could tell. The other, shapen wretchedly, trod the path of exiles in the form of a man, except that he was greater than any other man, he whom in former days the earth-dwellers called by name Grendel. They knew not his father, whether any secret sprite was formerly born of him. They kept guard over the hidden land, and the wolf slopes, the windy nesses, the terrible fen path where the mountain streams rush down under mists of the nesses, the floods under the earth, and it is not farther hence than the space of a mile where standeth the lake, over which are hanging the frosted trees, the wood fast by the roots, and shadowing the water. And there every night one may see dread wonders, fire on the flood, and there liveth not a wise man of the children of men who knoweth well the ground. Nevertheless the heath-stepper, the strong-horned hart, when pressed by the hound seeketh that woodland. When put to flight from afar, ere on the hillside, hiding his head, he gives up his life. Nor is that a canny place, for thence the surge of waters riseth up when to the welkin when stirred by the winds, the loathsome weather, until the heaven darkens and skies weep. Now is good counsel depending on thee alone. Thou knowest not the land, the terrible places where thou couldst find the sinful man. Seek it if thou darest. I will reward thee for the feud with old world treasure, so I did before, with twisted gold, if thou comest thence on thy way. Beowulf spake, the son of Ecgtheow. Sorrow not, O wise man. It is better for each one to avenge his friend when he is in much mourning. Each of us must wait by the end of the world life. Let him work who may, ere the doom of dead come. That is afterwards best for the noble dead. Arise, O ward of the kingdom. Let us go forth quickly to trace out the going of Grendel's kinswoman. I bid thee do it, for neither in the bosom of the earth, nor in forest of the mountains, nor by the way of the sea, go where she will, shall she escape into safety. Do thou this day be patient in every kind of trouble, as I also hope to be. The old man leapt up and gave thanks to God, the mighty Lord, for the words of Beowulf. Then was bridled a horse for Hrothgar, a steed with twisted hair, and as a wise prince he went forth in splendid array. The troop of shield warriors marched along, and the traces were widely seen in the forest ways, the goings of Grendel's mother over the ground. Forward she had gone, over the murky moorlands, and had borne in her grasp, bereft of his soul, the best of the thanes who were wont to keep watch over Hrothgar's homestead. Then Beowulf, the Aetheling's child, stepped o'er the steep and stony steps in the narrow pathways, and the straight and single tracks, an unknown way, by the steep nesses and by many a sea monster's cavern. And one of the wise men went on before to seek out the path, until all at once he found some mountain trees, overhanging the grey stones, a forest all joyless, and underneath was a water all blood-stained and troubled. And a grieving thing it was for all the Danes to endure, for the friends of the Shieldings, and for many a thane, and distressful to all the earls when they came upon the head of Asher on the cliffs above the sea. The flood boiled with blood and with hot gore. The folk looked upon it, and at times the horn sounded, a battle song ready prepared. All the troops sat down, and many kinds of serpent they saw in the water, and wonderful dragons searching the sea. And on the cliff slopes, monsters of the ocean were lying at full length. When the morning tide often make a woeful journey on the sail path, and snakes and wild beasts they could see also. And those living things fell down on the path, all bitter and angry when they perceived the noise, and the blast of the war horn. And the prince of the Geats killed one of them with his bow and arrows, and ended its wave strife. And he was in the sea, slower at swimming, as death swept him away. And on the waves, by fierce battle, hard pressed, and with boar spears savagely barbed, the wondrous sea monster was assailed in the struggle, and drawn up on the headland. And men were looking at the awful stranger. And Beowulf put on him his armor that was fitting for an earl. And by no means did he lament over his life, for the hand-woven coat of mail, which was ample and of many colors, was destined to explore the deeps, and knew well how to defend his body, so that neither battle grip nor the hostile grasp of the treacherous one might scathe the breast or life. And the white helmet thereof warded his head, that which was destined to search out the bottom of the sea, and the welter of waters, and which was adorned with treasures and encircled with noble chains, wondrously decked and set round with boar images, as in days of yore a weaponsmith had made it for him, so that no brand or battle sword could bite him. And by no means was that the least of the aids in battle that the spokesman of Hrothgar lent him at need. Even the hilted sword, which was called Hrunting, and it was one of the ancient treasures. Its edge was of iron and poison-tipped and hardened in battle sweat, and never did it fail in the fight any man who brandished it in his hands, or who dared to go on fearful journeys to the field of battle. And that was not the first time that it was to do deeds of courage, and Unferth did not think, he the kinsman of Ecglaf, crafty of strength, of what he formerly had said when drunken with wine. He had lent that weapon to a braver sword warrior. He himself durst not risk his life in the stress of waters and do a glorious deed, and thereby he lost his doom of famous deeds. But thus was it not with that other, for he had got himself ready for the battle. Beowulf spake, the son of Ecgtheow. O kinsman of Halfdane, thou far-famed and proud prince, thou gold friend of men, now that eager I am for this forthfaring, bethink thee now of what we two were speaking together, that if I should lose my life through helping thee in thy need, thou wouldst be always to me in the place of a father after my death. Be thou a guardian to my kinsmen, my thanes, and my hand-comrades, if battle should take me. And dear Hrothgar, send thou the gifts which thou didst give to me to Hygelac, and the lord of the Geats, the son of Hrethel, when he looks on the treasure and perceives the gold, will see that I found a giver of rings, one good and open-handed, and that while I could, I enjoyed the treasures. And do thou let Unferth, the man who is far famed, have the old heirloom, the curiously wrought sword with its wave-like device, with its hard edge. I work out my fate with Hrunting, or death shall seize me. After these words, the lord of the Wetter Geats courageously hastened, and by no means would he wait for an answer. The whelming sea received the battle hero, and it was a day's while before he could see the bottom of the sea, and very soon the fierce and eager one who had ruled the expanse of the floods for 100 years, she, the grim and greedy, saw the man was searching out from above the dwelling of strange monsters. Then she made a grab at him, and closed on the warrior with dire embrace. But not at first did she scathe his body safe and sound. The ring surrounded it on the outside, so that she could not pierce the coat of mail, or the interlaced worship with loathsome finger. Then the sea-wolf, when she came to the bottom of the sea, bore the ring prince towards her house, so that he might not, though he was so strong in soul, wield any weapon. And many a wonder oppressed him in the depths. Many a sea beast broke his worship with his battle tusks, and monsters pursued him. Then the earl saw he was in he knew not what hall of strife, where no water scathed him a whit, nor could the sudden grip of the flood touch him because of the roof hall. He saw too a firelight, a bright pale flame shining. Then the good man caught sight of the she-wolf, that monstrous wife down in the depths of the sea, and he made a mighty rush with his sword, nor did his hand fail to swing it so that the ringed mail on her head sang a greedy death song. Then Beowulf the stranger discovered that the battle blade would not bite or scathe her life, but the edge failed the lord in his need. It had suffered many hand blows, and the helmet, the battle dress of the doomed one, it had often cut in two. That was the first time that his dear sword treasure failed him. Then he became resolute, and not by any means did he fail in courage, that kinsman of Hygelac, mindful of glory. And this angry warrior threw away the stout sword, bound round with jewels, with its wavy decorations, and with its edge of steel so that it lay prone on the ground. And henceforth he trusted in his strength, and the hand-grasp of might. So should a man be doing when he thinketh to be gaining long-lasting praise in fighting, and careth not for his life. Then the lord of the Geats seized by the shoulder the mother of Grendel, nor at all did he mourn over that feud. And he, the hard in battle, threw down his deadly foe when he was angry, so that she lay prone on the floor. But she very quickly, with the grimmest grips, requited him a hand reward, and made a clutch at him. And the weary in soul, the strongest of fighters, he, the foot warrior, stumbled and fell. Then she sat on the hall guest, and drew forth her axe, broad and brown-edged, and would fain be avenging the death of her child, of her only son. But on his shoulder was the coat of mail all woven, which saved his life, and prevented the entrance of the point and the edge of the sword. And the son of Ecgtheow, the prince of Geats, would have surely gone a journey under the wide earth, unless that warlike coat of mail had given him help, that hard war-net. And unless the holy god, he, the cunning lord, the ruler in the heavens, had wielded the victory, and easily decided the issue aright. Then he straightway stood up. Then among the weapons he caught sight of a sword, rich in victories, an old weapon of the giants, and doughty of edge, the glory of warriors. It was the choicest of weapons, and it was greater than any other man could carry to the battle-playing, and all glorious and good, a work of the giants. And he seized it by the belted hilt. He, the warrior of the Danes, rough and battle-grim, and he brandished the ring-sword, and despairing of life he angrily struck so that he hardly had grasped at her neck and broke the bone rings, and the point pierced through the doomed flesh covering, and she fell on the floor. The sword was all bloody, and the man rejoiced in his work. Shone forth the bright flame, and the light stood within, even as shineth the candle from the brightest heavens. And then he looked on the hall, and turned to the wall, and the Thane of Hygelac, angry and resolute, heaved hard the weapon, taking it by the hilt. And the edge was not worthless to the battle warrior, for he would be quickly requiting Grendel many a war rush which he had done upon the West Danes, many times oftener than once when in sleep he smote the hearth-comrade of Hrothgar, and fed upon them sleeping, of the Danish folk some 15 men, and bore forth yet another one, that lowly prey. And while he requited them, this furious champion, when he saw the war-weary Grendel laying in death, all void of his life, as formerly in heart the battle had scathed him, his body sprang apart when after his death he suffered a stroke, a hard battle swing, and then he struck off his head. Right soon the proud warriors, they who were with Hrothgar, looked forth on the sea, could easily see that the surging water was all stained with blood, and the gray-haired ancients spoke together about the good man, yet they deemed not the atheling would ever again come seeking the famous Prince Hrothgar, glorying in victory. For it seemed unto many that the sea-wolf had destroyed him. Then came noonday. The valiant Danes left the headland, and the gold-friend of men went homeward thence. And the strangers of the Geats, sick in mind, sat and stared at the water. They knew and expected not that they would see again their liege lord himself. Then the sword began to grow less. After the battle sweat into icicles of steel, and a wonder it was that it all began to melt like as to ice. When our Father doth loosen the band of frost and unwinds the icicles, he who hath power over the seasons, he is the one true God. Nor in these dwellings did the Lord of the Geats take any other treasure, though much he saw there, except the head and the hilt decked out with jewels. The sword had melted, and the decorated weapon was burnt up. The blood was too hot, and so poisonous the alien sprite who died in that conflict. Soon Beowulf was swimming, he who formerly awaited the onset of the hostile ones in striving, and he dived upwards through the water. And the weltering surge and the spacious lands were all cleansed when the alien sprite gave up his life in this fleeting existence. He, the stout-hearted, came swimming to shore. He, the prince of the seamen, enjoying the sea spoils, the great burden of that which he had with him. They advanced towards him, and gave thanks to God, that glorious crown of thanes, and rejoiced in their Lord that they should see him once more. Then was loosened quickly from the valiant man both helmet and shield. The sea became turbid, the water under welkin all stained with blood, and rejoicing in spirit, the brave men went forth with foot tracks and passed over the earth, the well-known pathways. And a hard task it was for each one of those proud men to bear the head away from the sea cliff. 4 of them with difficulty on a pole were bearing the head of Grendel to the gold hall, until suddenly, valiant and battle-brave, they came to the palace. 14 of the each marching along with their liege lord, who trod the field where the mead hall stood. Then this prince of the thanes, this man so bold of deed and honored by fate, this battle-dear warrior, went into the hall to greet King Hrothgar. Then over the floor, where warriors were drinking, they bore Grendel's head, a terror to the earls and also to the queen, and men were looking at the splendid sight of the treasures. Beowulf spake, the son of Ecgtheow. Lo, son of Halfdane, lord of the Danes, we have brought thee this booty of all the sea all joyfully. This which thou seest is a token of glory. And I hardly escaped with my life, and hazarded an arduous task of war under water, and nearly was the battle ended for me, but that God shielded me. Nor could I in that conflict do aught with Hrunting, though the weapon was doughty. But the ruler of men granted me to see hanging on the wall a beauteous sword, mighty and ancient. Often he guides those who are bereft of their comrades. And I drew the weapon, and I struck in that striving the guardian of the house when I saw my chance. And that battle sword that was all decked out burned up so the blood gushed forth, the hottest of battle sweat. But I bore off that hilt thence from the enemy, and wrought vengeance for the crimes, the deaths of the Danes, as it was fitting. And here I bid thee to take thy rest all sorrowless in heart, with the troop of thy men, and each of thy thanes of thy people, the youth and the doughty ones. O Lord of the Danes, no longer needst thou fear for them, because of Earl's life-bale, as before thou didst. Then was the golden hilt, the work of the giants, given into the hand of the old warrior, the hoary battle-chief. This work of the wonder-smiths went into the possession of the Lord of the Danes after the destruction of devils. And when the man of the fierce heart, the adversary of God guilty of murder, forsook this world, it passed to the best of world kings by the 2 seas. Of these, who in Cedon Isle dealt out treasures. Hrothgar spake, and looked upon the hilt, the old heirloom, on which was written the beginning of the ancient feud since the flood. The all-embracing ocean slew the giant race, when they bore themselves so presumptuously. They were a folk, strangers to the eternal God, to whom the ruler gave their deserts through whelming of waters. Thus was there truly marked on the sword guards of shining gold, by means of rune staves set down and stated by whom the sword was wrought at the first, that choicest of weapons, with a twisted hilt adorned with a dragon. Then spake the wise man, the son of Halfdane, and all kept silence. He who doeth truth and right among the folk, and he who can recall the far-off days, he, the old protector of his country, may say that this earl was well born. Thy fair fame is spread throughout the wide ways among all peoples. O my friend Beowulf, thou dost hold all with patience and might, with the proud of mind. I will perform the compact as we 2 agreed. Thou shalt be a lasting aid to thy people, a help to the heroes. Not so was Hermod to the sons of Egwella, the honorful Danish folk, for he did not become a joy to them, but slaughter and death to the Danish people. But in a fury he killed the table companion, his boon comrades, until he alone, the famous chieftain, turned away from human joys. And though the mighty God greatly exalted him by the joy of strength over the people and rendered him help, yet a fierce horde of hate grew up in his soul. No rings did he give to the Danes, as the custom was, and joyless he waited, so that he suffered troublesome striving, and to his people a long time was baleful. Do thou be learning by that example, and seek out manly virtues. I, who am old in winter, sing thee this song. And a wonder it is to say how the mighty God giveth wisdom to mankind through wideness of mind, lands, and earlship. He hath power over all. Sometimes he letteth the joy of man, of famous kith and kin, be turning to love, and giveth them earth joys in his own country, so that he holdeth the city of refuge among men, and giveth him to rule over parts of the world, and very wide kingdoms, so that he himself foolishly never thinketh of his end. He dwelleth in weal, and neither disease nor old age doth deceive him a whit, nor doth hostile sorrow darken his mind, nor anywhere do strife or sword hate show themselves, but all the world doth go as he willeth.